Continuing to follow the breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ, Jim Harbaugh leaving Michigan to reunite with the Chargers, going back to where he once played. He was a quarterback there for the then San Diego Chargers, and now a reunion in the NFL. Spent 4 seasons with the 49ers, won 44 of his 64 games, led the team to a Super Bowl, lost to his older brother John, but now back in the NFL, Jim Harbaugh, the new head coach of the LA Chargers. And for more, welcome in CBS Sports NFL insider Josina Anderson. Josina, we knew that Jim Harbaugh had flirted with 2 teams, the Chargers and the Falcons. How did this deal get done with them essentially not letting him leave the building?
Well, first of all, yes, the Chargers get their man, their top man, their lead target, who I feel like has been their top target since from the beginning. You talked about his prior, tethers to the organization as far as having played there to now coming as head coach for the organization. And then you also mentioned the Atlanta Falcons. I don't ever think that that was Jim Harbaugh's ideal place to go. When you think about an organization that has Justin Herbert, our built-in, ready-made quarterback with a great arm and arm talent. He's coming off of success at Michigan. You're not really looking to have a dip, from that. So everything just kind of fit into place from the storybook, times that he's already been there to coming back to, the quarterback and all of that stuff. So what I want people to understand out there is just because there are multiple interviews and other things going on with other teams, it's called the art of negotiation. Everybody has in their mind where they want to go. Everybody has their preferable, targets. And it's really just more about seeing if they can come together and agree to terms on everything and nothing. It's really more about if nothing breaking down as opposed to it not really being a lead choice. So, that's just the way I see it. And just like you mentioned, he came from the East Coast after spending time with his brother watching the game that we covered at CBS Sports HQ in the division round between the Texans and the Ravens, and obviously flew across country. And if you're going to make that trip, not only in person, but go all the way across the country, I had Chargers fans asking, what's going on? It's like, clearly he's not going to spend just 2 hours there. He just made the cross-country trip. And that wouldn't be the style of ownership. So, he's going to be there. You're going to, take him to dinner, come back to the building. And then what was funny is that, earlier today, connected with my source, and I knew he was back in the building, and then everything just went quiet. And I mentioned on the hit earlier today on Spotlight that just from my experience as an insider, when it goes quiet like that, that they're negotiating. So I just said, we're all just waiting for that text to come through. Kudos to Adam Schefter for breaking that, Michigan alum and all that other stuff, and just the connections there and just, being able to experience that, from my former colleague and things like that. But yeah, I think this is great for the Chargers fan base. And more importantly, the other thing I just wanted to underline is that Jim Harbaugh brings a culture. He brings a culture and the ability to foster that, not just, his winning and successful accolades and records, but the ability to do that. And there are teams right now, as we come back into the next season for 2024, that have talent on there, but still, whether it be, and just my opinion, whether it be like the Jets and whether it be like, the Panthers or what have you, people that are still trying to find the pieces and still trying to build a culture. That's what you're instantly getting with someone who knows how to do that, has experience doing that with Jim Harbaugh now becoming the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers.
Josina, how is the power going to be divvied up with the Chargers inside the organization?
So they're still looking at GM candidates. They still want to have, a balance, checks and balances, as they should. I mean, even though as great as Jim Harbaugh is, and you guys, read off all of the stats pertaining to his resume and things like that, he's still been out of the league since 2014, focusing on college and things like that. So, while his prowess is on the field with X's and O's and talent development, it's not necessarily, being completely up to date in comparison to those who are currently in the league, as far as, picking talent, running the day-to-day operations and things like that. So they're going to have, they're expected to have Joe Ortiz, from the player personnel development side of things, with the Ravens, to reportedly come in there tomorrow. I was just talking to a source who feels like that is the schedule, but, and they continue to bring in people there to continue to talk to. So that's what we're expecting now. I don't feel like it's going to be likely some sort of Bill Belichickian type of rule over football operations from Jim Harbaugh, despite his prowess when it comes to football. Speaking of Bill Belichick, where do we stand right now with he and the Falcons? And my other question as a fan, why aren't the other three teams interested in Bill Belichick? I don't think it's not that other teams are not interested. I think Bill Belichick is making it, clear where he prefers. And not only that, the Falcons made him the first interview in the building, as some of these other candidates that are landing jobs have, been top targets. And he was also the first one to get a second one. And then I know there was a report out there that the owner flew him in on the PJ and things like that. And so, look, there's a certain prowess that comes with even Bill Belichick. And now that all these other organizations have interviewed other candidates, if, you've got, 6 Super Bowls with the Patriots and 8 total, how comfortable are you feeling coming behind other candidates to interview behind them? Now, when it comes to leverage and negotiation purposes, if you need to do what you need to do because they're dragging their feet and just tactically, strategically to give them something to think about, of course you'll do that. But I wouldn't even imagine Bill Belichick would do that unless someone is showing him the proper gravitas in the way that they would even bring him in. So they would have to probably bring him in just the same way Arthur Blank brought him in for, the interviews that he's had with Atlanta. So just because it looks a certain way on the surface doesn't necessarily mean like it's so. I feel like he's holding his lore as far as knowing, what he is. Everyone knows what it is in the building. Remember, I reported prior to even Bill Belichick leaving the Patriots that there was interest from the NFC South. That is because even way back then, I was hearing about, the talks. I'm not going to say whether they were team to team or whatever, but just talks, whether they're, separate or what have you, displaying mutual interest and just trying to, feel it out as to what it would be. But the other thing that I also mentioned really quickly, because I've heard people out there talking about, maybe, Bill Belichick and Rich McKay can't come together because there was previous, static there when Bill Belichick was head coach of the Patriots and with Rich McKay, CEO of the Atlanta Falcons, being chair of the competition committee. Rich McKay has been with the Atlanta Falcons since 2003. This is not a new concept to Bill Belichick about knowing that Rich McKay is going to have a voice in the building. And then it's like, oh, by the way, I'm going to have a voice. So they all know that. It's just about, okay, here's my number. Can you take the sticker shock? What are you going to do to try to get that down? And then lastly, too, they're going to be, I'm sure, just from common sense of being an insider covering this for 20 years, if Bill Belichick comes into your building, at some point that may alter the face of the front office, too, with the Atlanta Falcons. So while I imagine that there are people in the ear of Arthur Blank trying to, remain objective with their feedback on these interviews, I'm sure they're cognizant and aware of their own jobs as far as maybe trying to suggest continuing to look, not because, someone needs to tell me that specifically. That's just common sense of how these things work. I've been around this for 20 years. So I do think that Arthur Blank knows what it was like to miss out on a Bill Parcells. I think he knows that this is a organization that needs to get put back on the map. I can't even tell you the last time I covered the Atlanta Falcons, as far as even from a business standpoint, keeping butts in the seats and getting more in the seats. So I think he would be hard remiss to even consider someone else, even though they are, they're hot young targets out there. And let's just say, God forbid, it didn't work out well with one of these young upstarts, knowing that in the back of your mind that you let Bill Belichick go. So, that I'm sure is weighing on his mind. But and from everything I know, nothing has changed from Bill Belichick remaining the lead target. It's just a matter of if they're going to, come to an agreement, and if anyone in my mind is going to be able to sway him if there's frustrations that mount with talks.
So we've got 4 teams, right, left spinning on the coaching carousel. We just talked about the Falcons. Panthers, Seahawks, and Commanders are the other 3 teams that are still looking for a head coach. Are we to believe right now, would you expect that those head coaches for those teams are on a staff that's still in the playoffs right now? Essentially, are those teams waiting for a team to lose this coming weekend? Is that what we're waiting on right now?
Potentially, but just imagine now, obviously Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn are with the Lions. They're, obviously two prospects that have gotten many interviews and things like that, though, just for reality's sake, I do think that Ben Johnson is, right now hotter on people's lists as far as, the ordering of things like that. But imagine if they were to lose, to the 49ers, and does that help, finally just get Arthur Blank to just, go ahead and move forward and stop all of these interviews? Because at some point it's just like, okay, how many people are you going to keep talking to? And then not only would they be influenced just by the Chargers, just cutting the umbilical cord, get it done. That's your guy, get it done. Stop, all the tactics and the strategies and all this other stuff. Just get it done. But I do, and this is not what I'm reporting, but let's just have a conversation about it. We've got 4 vacancies. What am I thinking so far? What will happen? Right now, if I had to peg it, I would have Ben Johnson with the Commanders. I think Dan Quinn and Vrabel probably duke it out for Seattle, and somebody left over, whoever is going to kind of accept. And I don't mean to downplay it, but it's not as attractive as some of the other openings would go to, the Panthers. And I think some of the things that are hurting the Panthers opening right now too is just that, at least I know I hear through league sources that people realize that owner David Tepper is kind of really up and down, and you're hearing out there in conversations and from league sources and league circles just talking about the meddling and things like that. And obviously they didn't do very well this year, and now you have a new GM and things like that. So all of these things are getting quantified by prospects out there as far as whether they even come there or if they're trying to up the number to see if David Tepper will break. But overall, I still feel like, yes, some teams are waiting for these games to be finished, but I don't necessarily think it impacts where they already have them ordered. It's just a matter of how long are they going to continue through the motions and whether they can agree to terms with their top targets. And if not, then now you've conducted all these other extra interviews to downshift. But I believe the top targets remain the top targets. It's just a matter of whether they're going to, get it done.
Josina Anderson with the very latest here on CBS Sports HQ. As soon as the coaching carousel stops in another city, we'll have Josina back on with the very latest. And the Chargers echoing the sentiment of the Michigan Wolverines. Who's got it better than us? Nobody. And they are bringing in somebody. His name is Jim Harbaugh, the next head coach of the LA Chargers. Coming up. Is this, in fact, a good fit? Jim Harbaugh to the Chargers. CBS Sports senior NFL writer Pete Prisco has been covering the NFL for more than 3 decades. Joins us next here on CBS Sports HQ. Keep it locked.